Introducing your host, Steve Lags.
All right, here we go. Another episode of Steve Lags Unfiltered. This one's going to be hard hitting. We've got a former Navy SEAL, a new friend of mine, Sean Matson. He's also an entrepreneur now, a co-founder and CEO of CardoMax and CEO of Matbock. Sean, how are we doing today?
I'm doing well, Steve. Good to see you again.
All right, man. Hey, love having you here. There's so much to learn from you. I just want to share with my listeners, guys, to stay tuned on this one because we are going to go through so many of the principles that Sean's learned in the Navy SEALs, being a commander in the Navy SEALs, and also how he's applied that to life and entrepreneurship and leadership. So, Sean, maybe you could just tell us a little bit about how do you go from Navy SEALs to being an entrepreneur? Like, what does that look like for you? How do you transition into that?
Well, I think first thing is, I think first and foremost, I think the military does a phenomenal job of preparing veterans to go, start their own business, become leaders within an entrepreneurship journey. And the reason is because 9 times out of 10, when you're in the military, you are faced with some kind of task that you don't know the outcome of, whatever it's going to be. You have some kind of preparation, but the enemy has a say in whatever you do. So you're going to prepare for something. The enemy is going to have a say in whatever that mission might be. And so you're having to do more with less, operate on the fly, high stress environments, and basically no fail missions, right? And it's on and on, all these principles like you were just talking about that go into being an entrepreneur. The military does a great job, of really setting veterans up to be great leaders and potentially good business owners, moving forward. For me, it was kind of an afterthought. I didn't go to school for business. I didn't go to school to be an entrepreneur. No one in my family had owned a bit. I guess my grandmother, she did, but not in the sense of, kind of where I'm growing and where we're growing our company and the size and things like that. I didn't have, family history necessarily of that. It was military. My grandfather, my great grandfather, my uncles, they'd all served. So it was, more for me, it was going into the military, serving my country. As I was in the military, I really saw, and my business partner, Zach, who is the Bach part of Matbock. So my last name is Matson. His last name is Steinbach. So nice. We split our names in half and came up with a company name. When we were sitting there and we just we saw gear that we were getting issued at some of the highest levels, within the military, you're getting issued this gear. And the first thing guys were doing was taking this gear, disassembling it and making it their own. And it's we just spent millions of dollars to develop this product. Why are guys now taking this and destroying it and making it quote unquote better?
That's incredible.
So, what we started looking at was we saw just the military industrial complex that is, here is everybody was essentially building one product. And then everybody else was just copying that one product. And so we were like, nope, if we're going to come into this space and we're going to go do products, we need to be innovators. We need to be that guy that brings that new product in that everybody wants to try to knock off or compete with or do. So that's really where we try to separate ourselves from everybody else.
So you see your guys are in there and you're innovating the product that they've spent millions on to invest in for you guys. And you're innovating it yourself. It's not doing the job. It's not ideal because you guys are in the field. You guys know exactly what you need. And then you're sitting there saying, hey, we can make this product better. So you're thinking, are you thinking, hey, we're going to start a business? We're figuring this out? Or was this afterwards you're no longer serving and now you're out of the military and you say, hey, we got an idea. Let's go do this now.
No, so we started the business while we were still active.
Right.
And actually the first product we ever came up with has nothing to do really with the SEAL teams and what we were doing. We were actually developed this in training.
Okay.
The military pallets that we ship gear on is this big metal deck, and we were flying from San Diego to Alaska to do our cold weather training. It's an 8-hour flight on the back of a C-130, which is just a big military cargo plane that goes pretty slow. It's a prop plane, so it goes slow. So it takes 8 hours straight up there, and Zach and I are yelling and screaming at each other as we're staring at this pallet netting system and saying, "Hey, look, this is ridiculous. It just took, 30 some guys hours to put this net on top of this cargo system. Like, why isn't there a better way?" And so that was kind of the first idea. We got it patented. We had my grandma actually help us sew the first prototype for it. We figured out how to get manufacturing. We, did all these things while we were still active. And,
Right.
To date, that's been the worst product we've ever launched. we've never sold any of them. I think we maybe sold like 2 and gave one away maybe or something. But
Right.
what it taught us was just how to get a patent, and then really helped us create that pathway to get a product to market.
Right.
During that time, we started having more ideas, having guys bring us ideas just inevitably as we're saying, "Hey, we're starting this company, or we've got this idea to, bring new innovative products to the market." I mean, guys just started bringing us ideas, basically like, "Hey, go do this." And so very quickly we were like, "All right, we're on to something, right?" There's definitely a need for this, but Zach and I's focus was being a SEAL, being an operator. Like for me, it was a life goal of mine from the age of 13 to be a SEAL. So I was not thinking about running a business. And so what we did is we just kind of had this business thing just sitting on the side and just there while we were developing new products. And we could just reinvest every dollar back into the business because we were all over the world, focused on being a SEAL first. And it grew slow, obviously, because we weren't focused on it either.
Right. Yeah. Well, you're out there protecting our country. Meanwhile, you got a side gig. You just got a business started, and you're putting the foundation in. So a couple of things there where I think about right away. So it was great, your mindset. That first product wasn't successful in the sense of sales, but you see the success in that first product. It taught you something. It was basically, that was an investment in you learning how to patent a product and what you needed to do to really understand what was going to be like to develop a sellable product. But then you're in a field and you're getting research and you're getting data from the people that are using products, and you're sitting there, okay, like you're honest. So you're hearing all like these ideas, and there's all these opportunities for improvement, and you're getting it firsthand from the people that are actually using the product. So, and you're right there. So this is all collecting while you're just doing your normal Navy SEAL thing. And thinking about it, if you go through, you had a dream to be a Navy, there's so much to talk about with you, Sean. You had a dream to be a Navy SEAL when you're 13. Okay, that's like, okay, I have a dream to be an NFL player. I think that hits even harder, might be even harder to be a Navy SEAL. Was like, what is it, like 2,600 active Navy SEAL at one time?
I actually just came from my Centennial class. So I was my SQT class was class 259. 359 just graduated a couple of weeks ago, and they break down all the statistics. And yeah, it's actually, to make it through training and become and actually get a trident is less. You have a better chance of becoming an NFL player or basketball player or anything else like that out there.
So if you can accomplish that, what does that do for you in belief and confidence of like anything else you're trying in life? Whether, for instance, for you, it's being an entrepreneur right now. Does that experience help give you confidence and raise your belief on what's possible, what you can do?
100%. And typically, so like my belief is like here, right? Like I on everything that I do, it's
and why?
Then
like
backwards.
Why is your belief there? Like, what is it? Like, is it just because you were a Navy SEAL and you went through so much shit? Like, so what you did was so challenging and you stretched yourself so much that like beyond what you ever believed possible? Is it come down to that?
Yeah, but to some degree, right? But the fact is that it, like, I look back at even just as a child, like looking through the things of like going through dyslexia and learning through and, being made fun of for reading and things like this. And like, there's just like slow things that just chip at you, right? As you're growing up, and it's just, you're slowly getting chipped at and sculpted and years and years and years and years. And at the end of it is, okay, I made it. I'm a Navy SEAL, right?
Right.
But that wasn't even making it, right? Because now I have to go prove myself to my team.
Right.
And so now you get into a team aspect and you're the new guy there and you're showing up every day, putting forth effort and going forward. I would say my hardest thing that I have now is challenging myself, because I will get the opposite of that. I will start saying like, I don't need to go do that because I've already done this. Right. So that's my hardest thing. Like when, like the first couple of times that we're talking about, I'm sure, like the 75 hard stuff, when that first came out, everyone's like, oh, I got to do this. And I'm like, I don't have to do that. I've done worse things than that and longer than 75 days. Like, and then in my mind, it was just like, but why? Right. Like, and so finally I was like, all right, I'm going to just do it. And I did it. Right. And it's like, okay, great. But I don't feel a sense of accomplishment when I do something like that. That's not a challenge to me. That's where I have a hard time is setting a bar to challenge myself into something.
Right. Because you've already stretched yourself beyond that. Like the 75 hard, that the whole, when you go through that, and then that's the hardest thing you've ever done physically, and you go through that, you get that sense of accomplishment, and that's a great experience. You get that runner's high, but you get more confidence. But for you, it's not hard. So you need to go. So now there's less available hard for you because what you went through, so you said that you 13, you had this dream of being a Navy SEAL. How many people told you couldn't do it? Did you share that with anybody? Was that something? Did you get support? Did you have people in your lives that supported you and said, "Hey, that's a great dream, go for it"? And did you have people that like, "Hey, don't get your hopes up"?
There definitely were both. The ones that I remember were the ones that supported me, right? Like my mom, my family, they were always big supporters. The only one that was never a supporter was my great grandfather. Okay. And not because he didn't want me or didn't think that I could be a SEAL. So my great grandfather was in the Navy, saw some awesome, just crazy stuff. Cause like when he was in, it was like right after World War II and things like, so like, it's like early stuff. Right. My uncle, joined the Coast Guard to be a Coast Guard swimmer. A few years after joining the Coast Guard, he actually was killed in a helicopter accident. And so my great grandfather took like that very hard, and he felt responsible for that death, even though, there was nothing he could have done, but he always had that guilt that he was the reason my uncle joined and could not let that ever go. And so like, even when I was in like the ROTC, like he was like, this is good, but I don't want you to join, like he just was kind of in that world. Like he just took so much guilt for, losing, or feeling like that was his loss. But, other than that, I had, I put it out into the universe. I started telling people,
Great.
Anybody that knew me growing up, I was talking about, yep, I'm going to go be a SEAL. But it was also a different time because not a lot of it's not like we didn't have social media either. So like you're like, hey, I'm going to be a SEAL, and people are like, okay, sure, whatever. Yeah. There weren't a lot of movies out about being SEALs. There were some books out and things like that, but it's nowhere near like what it is now. More people understand or have seen into what being a SEAL looks like and can at least conceptualize more, now than what they did when I was growing up, and that unless you were in the military, kind of had some idea of military, where now, most people, if you say SEALs, they're like, oh, those guys got Bin Laden, it's like they just, yep, got it. So, but, prior to that, not many people knew really still what a SEAL was.
So when you so going through that to become a Navy SEAL, you got BUD training, right? And so was it BUDS? Yeah, BUDS training. So there's orientation in 3 phases. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So
Right.
BUDS is the first part. It's 3 phases: phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Phase 1 is where there's Hell Week. So Hell Week happens actually like the 4th week of this 6-month block.
Right.
And then
in that phase 1, there's a 33% success rate in phase 1. So that means that so many people drop out in that first phase, which probably Hell Week has a lot to do with that. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I would say, so just to give you, so when we started with 140 guys, we graduated 19. So the lion's share of that was during that first phase, and actually so there's like a couple weeks of like prep before you actually like class up into your BUDS class. You even lose some guys during that, which. Yeah. But then when you get into first phase, the lion's share of the people that quit is during Hell Week.
Yeah. So, and you think about it. And it's when you quit, you ring the bell, right?
That's correct. Yep.
And if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong. I did a little bit of research on this. So one of the intentions is you're banishing somebody. Once they're out, you're banishing, but you want to get the weak people, the negative people out of there as fast as possible. So that they're not negatively influencing everybody else in the program. Is that right?
Yeah, and so I mean, there's a lot of history behind the bell. In that, obviously dating back to 1962 when they formed Kennedy formed the SEAL teams out of the underwater demolition teams that came out of World War II and things. But you have this training. The failure is going up and ringing the bell 3 times, and so it's kind of that, and they carry the bell everywhere with you. So you could be, typically it's where the grinder is, where you're actually working out on the asphalt stuff, but like they put the grinder on the back of the truck and drive it as you're running down the beach, so that it's always there. It's right there in front of your face. They will have it within a few steps of whatever evolution you're on, so that if you want to quit, it's very easy. It's not like you're having to run 3 miles back to the compound to go ring a bell. And it's right there so everybody else can see, that happen. And, we were talking a little bit before, I had guys in my class that were way better physically fit than I were. They could run faster, they could swim faster than I was. And then I also had people that were slower than me, couldn't swim as fast as me. But you had both of those groups. In those groups, you had people that would quit.
Right.
And it would blow your mind away. Like, we had this one kid that ran he could hold sub 6 minute miles for 4 miles in the sand, wearing boots and pants.
Wow.
So he was running 24-minute 4 miles soft sand runs. First time we ever got surf tortured right in first phase, he quit. And like, people were just like quitting like crazy because the kid was just like a PT phenomenon.
Wow. So what's the intention of bringing that bell everywhere and they're making it easy to quit? They want to make it convenient. Because I want to connect this to like other areas of life, where somebody, you might have the most talented salesperson, but maybe they're not committed, or they're not a culture fit. Right. So that's really about, having that mental toughness, being really committed and being able to go through the tough things that you need to go through in order to be able to be a Navy SEAL. But the same thing can happen in obviously at a much lower level of intensity, but it's still, there's lessons to learn how we could bring that. How can you bring that lesson into your business?
Yeah. So when you're doing this, right. And again, it's very easy to get access to the bell. It's right there. They bring it to you anytime you're maneuvering around an evolution, the bell is right there. So it's a simple thing, walk out, ring 3 times and they take you off, and you're no longer doing that evolution. Right. So You're in the middle of, for example, you're carrying logs, and you've got logs here like this, and you're doing lunges down the beach, and we would do lunges for miles down the beach. I mean, you're literally you've got a log, and I don't know how much the log weighs, but there's, 6 guys ish on a log, 6 to 7 guys on a log. And you're just holding this like this, and you're just doing lunges for miles. And they would say, hey, look, we're done with this evolution. All we need is one kid to quit. One kid, just quit. Right. Kid would quit, and they'd be like, all right, grab your logs. Let's go. Keep going. 3 more dudes would quit. And I mean, you would and they would constantly play these games with you, right? And to your point, right, that negativity part of it, it's so easy right there to just quit on it and say, I'm done. But then you also inside, like it was the absolute like opposite effect in your like boat crew, those 6 guys or so, right? Like, and so it was always like when you'd see someone else quit or someone else leave, you would look left and right and be like, we've got this, let's go. And it was like that almost reassurance, like, hey, let's go. Now, some guys would still quit, right? But it was like you were grinding it out with these guys, and they would keep reshuffling. So you had you had your boat crew with you, and you always had 6 guys on logs or people around you. So you always had this where you're surrounded by other people, in the middle of the suck.
So like it not only is it bringing out, it's basically spitting out the people who aren't cut out for it, but the people who are, it's bringing them closer together. And you're starting to start forming camaraderie, and you start realizing you're seeing like who's really in on this. And now you guys are starting to get on the same wavelength, because you're starting to thin out the herd a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. Like I don't know. Sometimes when I say it, I feel like, I'm coming across as cocky or just like, a jerk. But like when I would hear it, it was like internally, like I had more pride. I had another, just like at the end, in the back of my head, I'm also thinking percentages. So I got more motivation when I heard the bell go off. That was motivation to me of like, I'm still here. I'm still moving forward. Like, it can't get me.
Yeah, right. So every time more people, guys dropped out, all right, I know that I'm at another level. I'm now getting into the percentage. I'm getting higher there. Like I'm getting further along, because and so in business, what do you do here? How can you apply that? Right. So that. Okay, you want to identify, the idea is identify someone that's not a fit soon. Like if you bring somebody into a team, and is it better to find out if they're not a fit in the first couple of weeks, or, 6 months later?
Yeah. For us, there's a couple things. One, we have the ability with the military being here. There's a couple programs called Skill Bridge or Care Coalition programs where like we actually get to try a person out that's transitioning out of the military for 4 to 6 months. Right.
Oh, wow.
So the military will pay to place this person at your business. And so they can do it other places. It's just easier if obviously you're surrounded by some kind of base or stuff like that, where there's people that do that. But, and what we do is we have them go around and do everything. We put them in shipping and receiving. We put them in production. We put them in where the CFO is and operations and the general manager. And then they come sit with me for 2 weeks. And, we bounce them all around between all the different departments in the business so that they can see, 1, what it takes, and 2, if this is even something they want to, potentially go do. And if it is, which department did they enjoy the most, right?
Okay, right.
And then we also look at it from our side is do you think that person's going to be a good fit in that department, right?
Oh, that's great. What's that program called?
So Skill Bridge is the main one that DoD does. It's called Skill Bridge, but then under SOCOM, under Special Operations Command, they have another one that's the Care Coalition program. Or Warrior Care program, something to that effect. I can get you the information exactly, but
that's great.
But it's such a great program. And, so that's one, but then also, when we have a new hire, they're on probation for 90 days. So they don't get benefits. They don't get anything for 90 days. And then from there, we know, okay, yeah, this is someone that we're going to move forward with or not, even if they've excelled through the hiring process, right? Like, I mean, we know that, like, it's like, man, like, all right, this is, perfect person. But then you see 90 days later, it's like, all right, maybe this isn't the right person.
Yeah, right. They're not auditioning anymore. Now the real person showed up. Sometimes it just happens. That's just natural.
Yeah.
So I love that. So you did 5 deployments, correct?
I did. Yep. 5 deployments.
And let's see here. I think I have it right. You were on SEAL Team 4, Support Activity Team 2, and SEAL Team 8. Is this correct?
SEAL Team 8. Yeah. So those are so support activity is so obviously the SEAL teams, everybody knows the SEAL teams, but then support activity is all the basically intel groups. So human intelligence, signal intelligence, all these different like things that help get a SEAL team out the door to go action targets.
Okay.
It's a lot of the support elements in there, but they also have SEALs in different jobs over there as well.
And in SEAL Team 8, you were a platoon commander, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I got to do something that's not really typical. I got to do 2 platoon commanders back to back. So typically, once you hit a milestone, you go do the next thing above, which would have been for me would have been troop commander. Mm-hmm. So I would have been in charge of multiple platoons.
Right.
Like one of the premier jobs to do at a SEAL, especially as a young SEAL, is the platoon commander, because I mean you're in charge of your 16 to 20 guys. That's your platoon. When you go on missions, if it's typically early on and well, I guess kind of middle part of the Iraq days, we were going out with multiple platoons. So the troop commander would be the ground force commander.
Okay.
But early on, and then later on in the Iraq and Afghanistan, it was basically the platoon commander was the highest guy that was out there on the battlefield with your guys.
Right.
And it just depends on how many guys are going out on target and different things like that. But like there were a few years where troop commanders were the ones that were doing it. But by the time I got into those positions, it was back to basically your platoon commander would be, and very rarely would you have a troop commander be like the ground force commander at that later stages of, especially Iraq at that time. They would still deploy with you, but they were in different positions. And, but I got to do that twice. And so it was awesome because I just brought up guys that were like, hey, it was my leading petty officer, LPO. Then it became like our like a team leader and became our LPO, our leading petty officer, and my chief LPO became the chief. It was such a great platoon and experience.
How many guys are in a platoon?
16 to 21 ish. It depends on the team. And it depends on where you're going, what you're doing and things, but yeah, about 16 to 20 guys.
Do some guys not make the cut for a particular mission in the platoon? Like, hey, we only need like 5 guys or 10 guys, and like, hey, this is who we're picking. So that's probably like there's a lot of pride there. Like, I want to be on that mission, right?
Yeah, and then also depending on where you're covering down in the world and stuff like that. Sometimes where you're getting like where your platoon and troop are getting tasked out to something, you might only have 4 guys from your platoon in one location, and then you might have to send like your AOIC to another location with some other guys. You might have to send a chief to another location with a few other guys. So you might be in 3 or 4 different locations as 16 or 20 guys.
Oh.
So it depends. And again, it just depends on what's going on, where things are like again, just some of the deployments I got to go to in Iraq, it was like our entire troop. So 2 or 3 platoons were going to one location and we all were in one location and we all got to go do missions together.
I want to talk a little bit about, I just want to change the subject a little bit and talk about willpower because, I think that when you go through the whole experience of being a Navy SEAL, just to become a Navy SEAL and also to be successful as a Navy SEAL, you have to do so many things that you do not want to do, that you don't like to do. And on a lot of us in our lives, we, like, oh, we don't like to do that. We don't want to do things we don't like to do. It comes down to being able to stick into those moments, doing the things that are necessary, but you don't want to do, and how that builds up willpower and discipline. And then also just about, at the end of the day, being comfortable, being uncomfortable. Can you talk a little bit about how what you've learned about that through your experience with the Navy SEALs, and how that can help all of us in our lives?
Yeah, and two, I think it will translate to business right now, right? Like, so I would say right now we are, we just came off of one of the best years that we had in 2022. Last year was not a strong year for us, and so we're in this kind of trough right now, right? And we're building back out of it. That was our first year of ever having last year was our first year in 14 years of business ever having a down year, right? Okay. So you can't be so upset, but when you're growing at what we were growing at and doing and things like that, and really for Zach and I, we've only been focused on the business since 2017, 18, right? Other than that, we were doing other things. We were, still active or still in reserves or med school. And so it's only been about 5 or 6 years that we've really been focused on the business, but still, we've never had a down year. Last year was our first down year in that. And it's been a struggle with the team and everybody else. They know that we weren't able to pay out like we normally do on bonuses. We weren't able to do some of these things like this. So it has been a tougher, season that we're in right now. My wife and I've had these conversations multiple times. She's like, what if this doesn't happen? Or what if this, or she says, what if this doesn't work out? I was like, this is working out. There's nothing else I can go do. There's nothing else I want to go do. And I'm not even thinking, there's no plan B. My plan B is I'm fixing this. My plan C is I'm making this work. My plan D is this will work, right? Like, this is my A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, whatever plan. Like, it will work. We're in a little bit of a rut right now that we've got to work through. And I'm confident we can do it. And we're, around the right people to do it. And we've got the things in place to already get us out of this season. But that translates from SEAL teams. There was some great times in the teams that we were in. There was also some really rough times in the teams. The same thing within business. But right. I know right now, I could turn the lights off at Matbock, CardoMax, and everything else that we do, and I could go work for someone else, and I could go make 5 times what I make right now in a year, just based off my network, my work ethic, the fact that I could walk into somewhere with a book of business and I could start closing deals tomorrow, right? I know for a fact I could go do that. But then I also know for a fact I would be traveling on their schedule. I would be doing their deals. I would be, it's all them at that point. It's not me, right? And that's the part. That's where I see, when we talk about the will and then being able to do these things with family and things like that. I could go do all those things, right? And make more than what I'm making now, but you wouldn't see a happy Sean Matson, right? It would be on someone else's time and someone else's thing. So I'm going through it right now.
Yeah. And hey, for all the business owners and entrepreneurs that are watching this, you hear about when everyone's doing great, and most people are going to be a little bit more low key when they're having those down years or they're going through the struggles. I will just tell you that if you're going to be an entrepreneur, it is not going to be a rocket ship up to the top. You're going to have, it's life. You're going to have your ups and downs, and you're going to be tested. And you can listen to Sean here right now and hear how he knows for a fact he's going to figure out how he's not hedging himself and finding reasons why he can't do it and looking for the back door, talking about selling the company because it's getting too hard right now. He knows that he's going to get it. And there's always a way. It's just figuring out how. And in the process of that, when you're going through those struggles, you got to be focused on, all right, how am I going to overcome this? How am I going to overcome this? I just haven't figured it out yet, or I've got to figure it out, and it's going to take some time, and I need to be patient because I see the right things coming into place. That's just part of being an entrepreneur. And, if you're on a mission, it's about being able to adapt. Things don't go to plan. And you talked about it earlier, like you get dropped somewhere and all of a sudden things just start happening that you didn't expect. And it ends up being so much harder than you thought, right?
Yeah. When it's hard when, like I know, like my daughter, she's a freshman right now in high school, and she wants to go play Division I softball, right? And people are already telling her, hey, you're not good enough. You're not good enough. You can't make D1. You can't do this D1. You can't do this D1. And I was like, Shelby, listen, none of them have any idea. I was like, one, you're never going to hear me tell you that. Two, I was like, you have to just get rid of anything that anyone tells you, right? That comes in as negativity like this, because they're not the coach. They're not the athletic director. They're not the program. You have no idea. Like, you could walk into a place and it's the school you want to go to because of, the degree you want to go to. They're a Division I school, and they're like, hey, guess what? Our star first baseman just got injured. We're looking for a good, solid first baseman. Guess what? You might be their answer to, a prayer. You might also just, from now until 3 years from now, continue to just get better and better and better and outwork everybody else. Like these all things are scenarios that easily are obtainable, things can happen, but don't start looking at schools based off of, well, you can't make D1, so you need to go find a D2, right? Because you're already setting the bar here when you need to set it here and go for it and keep working towards it. And if you don't get a D1 school, it's okay, right?
That's
like
right.
You're still going to be in the top 1% of college athletes across the country, right? If it's not a, top 25 D1 school, who cares, right? Like, and she's like, yeah, but people talk. I was like, listen, who cares, right? You're not going to talk to any of these people ever again, so some of these just, lessons of, with kids and stuff like that. It's fun, but it's sometimes frustrating too with that. I know, with kids yourself.
Yeah. If you're a parent, your most important leadership job you ever have in your life is going to be you leading your children. And what you're doing an exceptional example. You're an exceptional example of doing it right. Because there's going to always be the naysayers out there. If you have a big dream, everyone has an opinion, and there will be plenty of people that are going to tell you why you can't do it. And what Sean's doing and what we need to teach our children is those are the people you got to tune out. You either got to distance them or you got to banish them. Like, you just got to eliminate them, because if you allow that to hit your mind, you're going to just constantly have these doubts. And you want to be around people that are going to be like, hey, this is awesome. Go for it. Like, I love it. What do we got to do to get you there? Let's work on it. Anything's possible. Anybody can do anything if they've really put their mind to it. And if his daughter really wants it really bad, she's definitely going to do it.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to talk about SEAL ethos. So I'm really fascinated by this, because I feel like so many of the leadership principles in here transcend the Navy SEALs. So just briefly, what does the SEALs ethos represent for you guys? How important is that for you? Like, in terms of like being a Navy SEAL, like what does that represent for you guys?
Yeah. Obviously on every mission you go on and things like that, you have your mission statement, you have your objectives and everything else. Like it's your playbook. It's what you come back to, and the government, right? It's the Constitution. It's what you go back to when you're trying to figure out a decision or a disagreement between things. And that's exactly what the ethos is, for the SEAL community. Is at the end of the day, it embodies what we are striving to be and do as a community and a collective, team.
That's amazing. So I want to read different parts of it and like how you take that and you apply that outside of the Navy SEALs. So when I think about my loyalty to country and team is beyond reproach. So when we think about, okay, Patriots, we live in the most amazing country in the world, and our teams that we lead in our businesses, how can you use that and apply that to everyday life here outside of the Navy SEALs?
Yeah. So if you're a business owner and you want to build loyalty and you want to build trust within your organization, right? Start having lunch with your employees. Start doing simple things like that, like going into the break room with them and doing, like communicating with them and having these things, setting goals with them and learning who they are and function, because what you're learning from them is who they are at the end of the day. One of the questions that I ask new hires, like typically, I'm one of like the last people that, get to come in for the hiring part of it. But one of the last questions that I ask when we hire someone new is in 3 sentences or less, what do you want your tombstone to say?
Nice.
Right. Because what I want to understand from them is their purpose. Right. If they tell me that, if they tell me that they're focused on, they want to have their family, they want to just travel, they, blah, blah, blah. This is what they want to have on here. Right. Like, I'm not rewarding that person with money. I'm rewarding that person with time off, which ultimately is money, but it gives them a chance to go focus on their family.
Right. I love that. All right. So this one, I love this. This resonates so much with me. The ability to control my emotions and actions, regardless of circumstances, sets me apart from others. I just think about it's leadership, right?
It is 100%. And when you are going through a tough time and things like that, like I was just saying, like I would say right now, we're going through a tough season right now, right? If I come into work every day and I'm pissed off, or if I'm showing frustration, or don't like, you don't want to sugarcoat. They need to know that we're going through a tough time, right? Which we have, and we've communicated that. But if you come in every day, doom and gloom, the world's over, blah, blah, blah. It's what we talked about, earlier. It's like, you're going to get rid of everybody that's good because they're like, hey, this is not for me. Right.
Right.
It's the opposite of like in Bud's training. It's like, we're getting rid of those guys. Right. Because they're the weak link of that. But if you bring that in as a leader into the organization, you're going to push the good people out.
I agree 100%. This is so simple, but it is so impactful. We expect to lead and be led. So, Sean, you think about leadership and you think about leading, but the ability to lead is ability to lead and also be led. Let's talk a little bit about that.
So Bud starts that off at the beginning, right? It's the only military training in the world that has officers and enlisted going through the exact same pipeline.
Right.
And so, people look at it like, okay, whatever, but it is setting that foundation from day one. When you walk in, and yes, I was an officer, but I have guys that were enlisted that are going through my class with me, right? And you're being told, hey, you're the officer, you're the leader of this crew. Go lead them in this evolution, right? And it's like, well, I'm learning the evolution and how to do this right now, just like they are. So how am I expected to go lead someone in something that I have no idea in, that they're also going through for the first time, right? And so you very quickly learn that you have to lead and also be able to be led. So there was plenty of times, and even in the teams, put something out, you gather information from everybody, because now you've got 16 or 20 people trying to solve a problem instead of one person trying to solve a problem. You get ideas, you get, another part of there talks about innovation. It's like,
Yes.
You get that innovation that comes into, from having this kind of collective, but then once the decision's made, everyone goes forward and moves forward with that decision. And there's no one else, you collectively come up with a decision, and then you move forward with that decision.
Yeah, I highlighted that too. It says it states we demand discipline, we expect innovation. Same thing. It's about people learning how to think, not teaching people what to think, but how to think and how to solve problems ultimately, right?
Yeah, and one of the things that we would always joke about is like, when we go to do a target, one of the like kind of sayings would be shoot, move, communicate, right?
Right.
And we would always make jokes of like other units and other stuff like that. Like for them, it's like shoot, move, ask. They would pause and ask for what they needed to do next. We're like shoot, move, communicate. We're just telling everybody, hey, this is what we're doing. This is where we're going. This is where we're going. And everyone's just playing pickup where you're going and feeding off of everybody else. Where what they would do is they would shoot, move, and then they would stop and then be like, hey, hey, sir, can we do this? Hey,
Right.
Can we go do this? Hey, can we go do this? Instead, we were always just like, we were this organism that just kept morphing to whatever it is to take it down and do. It's such a cool thing to see and do. And especially when you really get into this, like I'm sure you've read like Superman, that book, it talks about like a flow state. It really is like where you can get into this like flow state with your guys, and you work so much with guys that like I could literally look at a guy at night under nods with very limited thing, just know how he's positioned in front of a door. I knew exactly what he was going to do in a matter of a split second, because he did that every time without hesitation. He was doing this next, right? Because you don't get there without training and doing a lot of repetition and things like. So initially, like we would do is we'd walk through things like talking through everything. So you actually, hey, I'm stepping this way, I'm looking this way, I'm walking this way. So everybody's talking as they're maneuvering through something. And then you go through the next time and you do it daytime, maybe less talking until you're not talking anymore. Now you go to now we do it now at nighttime and do all those same things step by step by step. So where by the time you're done that night of training, you might be 8 and 10 hours into this like movement, where you're at the end of this where no one's talking. You're not allowed to talk. You are just moving off of everybody's next movement while you're going through houses, buildings, whatever it is. It's just a really cool thing to do.
Yeah. So a couple of points there. Everyone's learning how to think and make decisions so that it can move faster, but you only accomplish that with a tremendous amount of training. Everyone's in tune with one another. So you get in this total zone, this flow state, which that's exactly what you're describing. So imagine if you're a business owner right now and you were able to train teams in your organization that they were able to move that fast, not sit around and wait for someone else to tell them what the next move could be. But the only way you do that is training. And I think another statement there is my training is never complete. It's just constantly training.
Yeah, one of the things that we try to do here in our company is when, something as simple as customer service, right? Like we try to instill on them and empower them to make that decision. And what we say is like, at the end of the day, I want you to do whatever you feel that you need to do if you were in that situation. Treat people the way you want to be treated. A bare, basic, simple thing of being a good human.
Right.
But when someone's yelling and screaming at you because their order got messed up and things like that, it gets difficult sometimes. But let's just talk about, the customer service side of it. It's like, if you go and you do exactly what you think would be a good, okay, hey, you refunded the order and you reshipped the correct flavor or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. And if that was what your decision was, nobody here is ever going to tell you like that is wrong, right? Like, I want you to act first. I would much rather you act and do whatever you need to do to take care of that situation. You don't have to come talk to your manager to say, hey, can I refund this $10 or $20 or $100, right? Now, inevitably, you have to do some corrective measures and things like that, especially when you give this flexibility, just like we would have AARs and we would fix things that didn't go right. Like if somebody, an extreme example is like, hey, someone wanted a $10 refund, but you gave them a $200 refund and shipped them $3,000 worth of free gear, right? Like, it's like, hey man, that might be a little excessive, right?
A little reckless.
At the end of the day, for us though, you better be able to justify why and this is how we look at it, is you better be able to justify why you felt like that was what is validated for this situation.
Right.
And
yeah,
they came back and said, hey, look, I hear you. However, this guy spent $10,000 with us in the last 2 years, blah, 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 blah. And here's why I did it for him for this one time like this. Hey, you know what? I didn't see all these other things. That's 100%. You're right. Right. But if it's a guy that, like, again, it's like an extreme situation where they only spent maybe $10 and you've refunded them $3,000 or whatever, right? It's like, yeah, that's not going to fly anymore. Like that's excessive, right? So there's got to be some controls on that, but we don't hammer that person for making the decision. We might have a corrective action afterwards of saying, hey, listen, like, okay, give me your thought process. And okay, like, this was, you're spot on here. You're spot on here. Hey, we need to fix this. This is where we went, off the tracks on it.
Right. So you're basically debriefing what happened. It's the same thing you guys do with missions, right? What do you, in the Navy SEALs, what do you guys call it when you get back? I'm sure every mission, you guys are analyzing it and finding what went well and trying to figure out that it's about what were you thinking, right? Like, it's not just about what we did, but it's also what was the thought process there, right? So how do you guys do that?
It's called an after action, AAR, after action review. Yeah, we would do it after every mission, and each leader has a different style of how they like to handle it. But typically, you would go phase by phase of the operation. So you'd start at start from basically mission planning. All right, how did we do in mission planning? Then you would go to like us getting our gears, preparation, and then on our way to the mission, actually actions on the objective at the mission. Post securing of the objective, leaving the objective, coming back, and then all the way to the debrief. And so you would go phase by phase by phase. And sometimes, it ended with guys fighting because, you're getting called out on stuff and people are, emotions are high and different things like that. But at the end of it, when the debrief was over, it was over. And you weren't allowed to go back and talk about the debrief. Or when that phase was over, right? If and this is why I say sometimes it depends on, but generally speaking, if one of the leaders that were running him, when you finished, like if we were finished, phase one of, our mission and we're on phase two and we're debriefing phase two, you can't go back and talk about anything at phase one anymore. We've said it, we've done it, it's over, move on. And now we would just go on to the next thing.
Yeah, ability to move on and move forward. Like you don't live in the past. You don't drag emotions. You learn from it. Okay, what do we learn? Now let's move forward because we're going to apply that, and then let's move forward to continue learning. Sean,
I got to tell you one little quick thing on that. Like I had one senior chief that I loved what he would. So like he would get to the end and he would be like, "All right, last thing," and he would just kind of sweep across. And if the hand passed you already, you weren't allowed to talk anymore. And so he would just go. And so then he was like, all right, that's it. Now next phase. And he would start like, okay, now we'd go through this phase, but he would give everyone one last chance to say any, basically alibis. And I love that. It's just like, it was always like in the debrief, you were like waiting for it to come. I don't have anything like, but once it passed, it was over. So.
Yeah. It's good as a leader, you've got a topic. Hey, any last questions before we move forward? Because when I'm leading a meeting and all right, we're done with that particular item on the agenda. Any last questions? Nope. Okay, let's move forward because we don't want to be on to the next item on the agenda. And then all of a sudden someone's going backwards. And I'm like, all right, now we're all over the fucking place, guys. We're done with that. We got to move forward. Awesome job, Sean. First of all, number one, on behalf of myself and all my viewers and listeners, thank you for your service. Like, you're a complete patriot, and too many people in this country take all the freedoms we have for granted, and all too well what the real true cost is for us to all live the lives that we have in the United States. And we're all really fortunate to live in this amazing country because of people like you. So I just want to thank you so much for that.
I appreciate the support, definitely. Like I said, I loved every bit of it, every minute of it. I'd go do it again, if I was 17, 18 again.
Yeah. I think you got to be under 28 to be eligible to try out for Navy SEALs, right? Is this something like that? You got to be a young guy.
You can get waivers. We had a guy in our class that was 33. And he made it through.
I'm 50. I don't think I'll make it.
Yeah.
Hey, Sean, I'd fall apart. I'm so injury prone right now. Hey, Sean. So if our listeners and viewers want to connect with you, learn more about your companies, like, hey, plug everything, like where can we find you?
Yeah, the easiest thing is if you come on Instagram or any of the other platforms, I'm just Sean.Matson. So SEAN.Matson. All the company links are there as well. But yeah, that's probably the easiest on all the different platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook.
Awesome, buddy. Hey, thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate you. Look
Appreciate
forward to watching you bounce out of this and have amazing success. You've been really successful already in such a short time in this business. I'm looking forward to watching it, buddy.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
That's all for today's Steve Lags Unfiltered Journey. Subscribe, rate, and leave a review to fuel your success journey. Also, be sure to listen to us on your favorite podcast channel or outlet. Stay tuned, stay unfiltered, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Boom.